Okay, welcome to part 2. We already talked about these guitars over here. Oops, hold on. They just don't make USB ports like they used to. Cables, I mean. There we go. Let's free it up a little bit. So we talked about the collection of guitars within this household. Let's talk about what we plug those into. And I'm going to need some old man glasses because I'm an old man. And there we go. There's Oscar. So, let me find a place for this. Oh, boy, what a tangled mess. Let's see what happens if I do that. All right. All right. What do we put these guitars into? Let's start off with, of course, we go into effects. Let's start off with this. I love this thing. The Zoom G5. It's got some great sounds to it. I really like the sound of this thing. And one of the coolest things I've ever... it sure beats those little stomp boxes, that's for sure. I don't think I'll ever go back to that again. People might have their choice. This is mine. It's got a little tube in there for a preamp. Not that I need it. And my son got that for me. Well, he bought it, and he knew I loved it, and then he gave it to me. What a nice kid. But thing's awesome. There's my Boss Dr. Rhythm DR660. Bought that. Oh, man. It had to be early 90s. And back then they had MIDI interfaces for these, but back in the early 90s, not too many people had a computer. But now I have a MIDI sequencer, and it's all hooked up. And it has actual drum samples in it. They're not fake. And I can actually run software onto my computer, which will control this and give me any song just about that I want. And I can set any drum kit that I want to go with it. So name a song, chances are I can set it up to play that song. It's pretty cool when you want to jam with something. A little easier than an actual drummer. And it takes up less space. I mean, not that big. Anyways, I used to use this. Digitech RP20 valve. It also has a tube in it. Right in there. There's the vent. Little preamp tube in there to give you that tube effect in case you've got a solid state amp and you want that semi-tube sound. You can get it with this. But ever since the Zoom came into my life, this old RP20, still pretty cool. Can also run this on the computer through the MIDI connectors here. And control all the features and functions and effects and everything you can think of. It's got a built-in tuner. I prefer the stock preset of channel 24 or number 24. It was always my favorite. Number 24 was cool on this. And I've stuck with it for over 10 years with that setting. But things change. Got a cool pedal on it. It's alright for its time. So we got the Zoom now. That goes into stereo out. Well, now I'm running mono out. I don't do stereo anymore. And that goes into the Eventide. That says H3000B, but it's really a 3500 DX, I think, or something of that nature. I modified it I bought the EPROMs for it to upgrade it to a 3500. It's pretty cool. It does some crazy shit. Some shit's too crazy for me. If you're into Steve Vai shit, you want one of those. I'm not Steve Vai. Don't want to be Steve Vai and don't want to sound like Steve Vai, and never could if I tried. But that's a fun toy. It has some regular settings. I run it on 244. It only adds a slight tone to the sound that I like. I can turn it on and off, and normal people wouldn't hear a difference, but I do. So I usually flip it on, and it stays at setting 244 preset with a few adjustments here and there. But it's pretty neat. And just above that is this DOD 410. Got to have an EQ at your shit. And this, I got lucky. I paid $15 for this EQ at a garage sale. And for $15, it works like new. Works beautiful. Perfect. No problems with that. And boy, it comes in handy. My son bought me this MXR EQ, and that's also pretty cool. I use it in line now because I need the stereo out jacks. Well, I can't move it very far. It's got a small patch cord on it coming out of this load box, which is the newest thing I bought. Some of you know what that is, and it's probably the coolest thing I ever bought and the smartest thing I ever bought, because I can run a Marshall 100-watt head into that safely and play any time of day I want without bothering a single person. Just run my headphones in there and crank the Marshall up to 3 and get Marshall at 3 sound. Get them tubes going like they should and not bother a soul in the house. Straight to the headphones. And what it has is it pretends that it's a speaker load and protects your amp from frying because it needs a load. And this provides the 100-watt load at 8 ohms. And I just set the amp to 8 ohms, plug the output directly into this, and the software and firmware, whatnot, emulates speaker cabinets, mic'd speaker cabinets. Some people like to mic their own speaker cabs, but I think the microphones and cabinets cost more than this load box will cost altogether. So in the long run, if you're an apartment dweller, you get yelled at a lot. Neighbors don't like what you're doing. You want to crank your Marshall or your tube amp up. This is what you want right there. That's also interfaced into the computer. This is also interfaced to the computer. I control everything from the computer screen. The Eventide as well, but I don't bother because I don't use it that much. That's only for... there's just a tone that I like that it produces when it's in line. And I use it. And I paid a lot of money for it, so you're damn right I'm going to turn it on. So that's all. That's the way it goes. From here to here to here. Okay, my camera is all screwed up. Here, here, here. Out into here. Dual speaker out, or dual amp. And when I'm not using this and I want to use amplifiers, which you'll see why I have a load box, is because these, nobody wants to hear these. I don't know why. But nobody seems to appreciate it when I've got these cranking up. And I usually run the Marshall on the left there is my left channel, and the right channel is, believe it or not, can't see it from here, but that's a Sovtek 100-watt MiG 100 amplifier made in Russia. I call it the Ronald Reagan amplifier because if it wasn't for him, he wouldn't have put the MiG company almost out of business. And they were forced to do something to make money, so they decided to make amps with military surplus. Well, Google it. I don't know. It's what I read. So the MiG 100 is actually MiG, which is the aircraft company in Russia that makes the MiG aircraft, fighter jets. So, yes, that is where that came from. And I'll tell you a funny story about these amps. This Marshall, it's a Super Lead. It's an original. I dated it with the serial number to somewhere around 69-ish to 70. And I paid $50 for it when I was 16 years old. That amp was the luckiest thing I ever found in my life. One of the luckiest things. And man, I had to do a lot of work to it, but it was worth it. I had it recapped, new sockets, new tubes, knew this, knew that. Had to replace the transformer, but it was worth it. That amp's 100% up and running after many, many years of being on the fritz. So I'm able to actually use that 100% for the first time in probably 30 years that I had it. Yeah, I paid about $50 for that. Strange story how I ended up with it, but it was all pure ironic fluke. The cabinets I bought in the late 80s, and originally I was running a Peavey Bandit portable through those speakers, which sucked. I got rid of the Peavey Bandit. That was one of my first amps I ever got. Well, second amp I ever got. And anyhow, I got rid of the Peavey, and just like this Westone, my friend Ray, who I obtained this from, he also had a crate amplifier. And I don't know if anybody remembers the crate amplifiers. They used to actually look like a crate, the early models. And man, those things sounded really cool. And they're really cool. I'd get one if I found one, I think. But this is a 60 watt. And he bought one of these, and I liked it a lot. And with this Westone and this crate amp, it sounded really cool. And so I ran right out and got one of these. And then I ran that into these speaker cabinets on the left, the A's and B's. And that's all I had for quite some time, until I got that sucker going. And finally got that going. But that's been just sitting there now. That amp on the right, the Soundtech, believe it or not, so, coming home from work, that thing was sitting on a junk pile on the curb. Jumped out, grabbed it, and took it home. All it needed was a couple fuses, clean up the sockets a little bit, and here it sits. Works perfectly fine. I put a new set of 4881 tubes in it, match quads, and she sounds good. And my son bought me these Marshall cabinets, and I had to get the 900s rather than the 800s. It would have been nice if they matched, but these are 16 ohm only. I could rewire them, but I didn't. I left them at 16, and I run them, both of them with the Marshall at 8. And the JCM 900s are 8 and 16 ohm. They're switchable. And it was more convenient because that Soundtech head only has one 8 ohm output and 2 4 ohm. So I have to run these at 8 ohm and run out of the 4 ohms on the amp to make sure it matches properly. At least that's the way I'm told it's supposed to be done. So these sound great when they're fired up, running in stereo, but you can't always just plug into a couple of stacks and play anytime you want, if at all, half the time. So the load box, probably the coolest idea ever on the planet right there. And it sure beats miking your amps if you want to record shit. I mean, you stick a mic in there. I've tried it. It's not the best microphone in the world. This thing's been around forever. There's somebody out there, his name is Tom. He remembers this microphone, I think. you might just remember this microphone. But, you know, mic your amp up wherever you want it and record. But I found that's not as easy as it sounds. Not as easy as it sounds at all. Hold on a second. We're having troubles here with the camera. So when you run through this, there's an output on it that I run to my computer. And through the computer settings in the sound card, I can record what comes directly out of here, which sounds like a Marshall stack on the recording, or at least pretty close, without having to buy fancy interfaces and more audio equipment that's expensive. And we have Steinberg software here, but I don't use it. It's overcomplicated, over bloated. It sounds fine directly into the sound card, into simple basic video camera recording software that's built into Windows. Good enough for me. I'm not making money off this. I can also run drum tracks through the same output and combine the guitar with the drums, and if I want, bass or anything for that matter, and create my own tracks and jam to those if I want, and record them and post them on YouTube, which I probably won't because I suck. But that's for you guys to do. But anyhow, that's the shit, and it's all I need. I don't need stomp boxes. No more 9-volt bullshit, crackly, noisy bullshit. I like this because it's nice and clean. It's got a compressor built in. When you're playing, it makes the sounds you want, and when you stop playing, it makes no sound. Don't need all that bullshit hissing and crackling and popping and unreliability. But here's something. Here's a piece of shit for you. Probably the biggest piece of junk on earth. Don't want it. I have no use for that. I don't even think I ever used it. This, here's something interesting. Some of you might have seen this before. Electro-Harmonix. Somebody gave this to me. All the wiring was broke. All messed up. So I took it apart. Fortunately, I have some kind of electronic skills. And found some schematics and rewired it. Had to replace some ICs in there, which I never thought I'd find. The designer that used to work for Electro-Harmonix that designed this actually sent me an email. He told me to throw it away. Then I looked on eBay for a Bad Stone phase shifter, and if that's what they're paying for these, I'm not throwing it away. And it sounds okay. The only problem with this is as soon as you plug it in, you lose a tremendous amount of tones, and it really does. Just plugging this in line damages the tone badly. And as soon as I get around to it, I'm going to go through the circuit and see if I can figure out a way to bypass that and eliminate that horrible, atrocious loss. That's the problem with a stomp box. The minute it's in line, it turns everything into shit before you even put a battery in it. But it sounds kind of cool. Phase shifters were always cool. And this one works now. It's kind of neat. It's all novel to me. Don't need it. I just own it. Kind of a conversation piece, I guess. There's one thing I did buy, though. Let me grab that. This little sucker. I got a gift card for the Guitar Center. And for $50. And I thought, oh, you probably get a bunch of strings and some picks. You can always use those, right? And I walked into Guitar Center to get guitars, strings, and picks. And ended up buying this. It was like brand new in the box for just under $50, so I had just enough using the gift card. I'm not really into this stuff, wah pedals and stuff, because they all sound the same to me. You know, it's either wah or wah. You know, there's no middle of the road here. But I bought it anyway because I had plans. Again, knowing a little bit about circuitry, I took it home, and you're probably wondering what this is. You know, it didn't come like that. I put my own pod in here, kind of rigged up the circuitry a little bit, swapped out the choke that's in there, or the inductor rather, so I can have more control over the wah effect. I can have a giant sweep or the ever so mild sweep. So there is now a little bit and a lot of bit. So I can control this any way I want. And it turns out that I really like this now. It has so much more control. I set it for where I want it, give it a couple test runs, and as soon as I find that sweet spot I like, that's not too radical or swishy sounding, I leave that there and set it, and it sounds great. And also swap out a resistor in there for the voicing to get a little less, get the raspiness out, get a better tone out of it. So this thing's kind of cool. You know, I every now and then like to play around with it. Adds a little bit more to your playing a little bit, but that's about it. That's the setup, and that's the computer. And there's Foreverland. It's hard to line up Foreverland, but that's Foreverland. So, and there's the new computer, which I like a lot. So that's, oh, there's my 4-track. Yeah, cassette. But it's still a decent mixer. Can use it, I guess, but I don't have a need for it. We're in modern days now. You can do everything from software now. You don't really need half of this stuff. But that's it. I probably should start putting my guitars away. We don't like to lay our guitars out like that. Oh, and there's my sign. That was given to me by my son recently, actually. Somebody gave it to him. It's a pretty cool sign. I don't agree with it, but it's a cool sign. There's the acoustics over there. 12-string and a 6-string. Oh, muzzle. Let me get that. Now this has got a story. Driving down the road, and what do we see? This thing's sticking out of a garbage can. It's an Epiphone. Probably not the best thing in the world, but it was all warped. The bridge was like, this bridge was sticking way up in the air, all warped, and for whatever reason, I brought it home, set it in the corner, and it's brought back to normal. Everything just automatically went back to normal shape. And it plays okay. Okay, not great. But you know what's cool about this? It's got a bolt-on neck, which is weird. I've never seen a bolt-on neck on an acoustic before. But this thing plays like an electric guitar. So that makes it cool. So what did I do? Yeah, I stuck a pickup in it. And you see the two holes where I tried to put a bridge and a tailpiece in there. Bad idea. And even an input jack. How did I get it wired all the way to there? Was not easy. But there's a volume knob. That's it. For what it's worth. Anyways, the 12 string, it's not expensive. It's off-brander. But it plays alright. Alright, that's it for me. I'm all done. Hope you found it interesting. If not, that's the way it goes. So, hope you like the videos. And maybe someday I'll post the way these sound through all this crap. As soon as I figure it all out. Because some of this is new to me. The computer is new, and I'm going to weed out some recording stuff and see what we can come up with. And maybe you can hear a couple of these guitars. They sound pretty good. They all kind of sound the same through all this, but let's do it for fun. Maybe part 3. Who knows? Later.